pale stillness of a Kyoto dawn, when mist clung to the palace gardens like a second skin, a young woman knelt motionless on a tatami mat. Her back was straight. Her hands were folded. Her eyes were lowered exactly 3 finger widths from the floor. She had been kneeling like this since midnight. No chains bound her wrists. No guard stood over her. And yet, she was a prisoner all the same. This scene would never appear in official court records. No scroll recorded her name. No chronicle described her punishment. But within the sealed walls of Japan's Imperial court, silence itself was a weapon. For centuries, the world imagined the Japanese court as a realm of harmony, poetry, silk robes, and refined ritual, a civilization built on restraint, beauty, and order. What those images concealed was a system of control so precise, so psychologically devastating, that physical violence was rarely necessary. Inside the court, punishment did not bruise the body. It erased the self. This is the hidden history of how Japan's imperial court disciplined its women, not with whips or chains, but with ritual, humiliation, isolation, and silence so absolute it shattered identities. And once a woman entered this world, escape was almost impossible, a palace built to observe. By the Heian period, beginning in the late 8th century, the imperial court in Kyoto had perfected a culture of surveillance without watchers. Everything was seen, nothing was acknowledged. Court women lived behind screens, bamboo blinds, and layered curtains. They were rarely visible directly. Instead, they existed as silhouettes, voices, sleeves emerging from behind silk partitions. A woman's value lay not in action, but in restraint. Her posture, her tone, her silence. From childhood, noble girls were trained in stillness. They learned to sit without shifting, to sleep without turning, to speak without revealing emotion. Mistakes were not corrected with blows, they were corrected with withdrawal. The first punishment, erasure. The most common punishment in the imperial court was not confinement. It was removal. A woman who displeased a superior by speaking out of turn, showing visible emotion, or attracting unwanted attention, might find her name quietly erased from daily ritual lists. Her attendants would stop coming. Her meals would arrive late, cold, or not at all. Her poetry would go unanswered. No one would explain why. In court culture, acknowledgement equaled existence. To be ignored was to vanish. Some women endured weeks without hearing their own names spoken aloud. Contemporary diaries hint at the effects. Women wrote of losing track of days, of speaking aloud to screens, of forgetting the sound of their own voices. One court lady wrote that silence pressed against her chest like a weight. Punishment by protocol. More severe punishments came cloaked as instruction. A woman judged insufficiently obedient might be reassigned to repetitive ritual duties, copying the same sutra for hours, arranging incense in exact patterns, rehearsing the same bow hundreds of times. Each movement had to be perfect, each angle memorized. An incorrect tilt of the head meant starting over. This was not discipline meant to improve skill. It was discipline meant to exhaust will. Hands cramped, knees swelled, eyes blurred. But complaining was itself a violation. Pain endured silently was considered virtue. Pain acknowledged was shame. The art of controlled humiliation. Humiliation inside the court was never public. It was intimate. A favored punishment involved forced proximity to higher-ranking women. A disgraced court lady might be ordered to sit behind another woman's screen, invisible, listening as poetry was exchanged, laughter shared, favor bestowed. She could hear everything. She could participate in nothing. In other cases, she was required to assist rivals holding robes, arranging hair, preparing cosmetics while remaining unseen and unacknowledged. Serving was not the humiliation. Being unseen while serving was. Sexual politics without touch. Unlike many other courts, Japan's imperial punishment rarely involved overt sexual violence. Instead, it weaponized access. A woman's worth was tied to proximity to power. Attention from an emperor or prince elevated her entire lineage. Its withdrawal could destroy her. If a woman was deemed unsuitable, too ambitious, too visible, too favored, her access could be cut without explanation. Screens were lowered. Messengers stopped arriving. Invitations ceased. She would remain physically present in the palace, yet politically dead. Some women recorded the moment they realized they had fallen from favor. Not by words, but by sound, the rustle of robes passing without pause outside their chambers. The punishment of waiting, one of the cruelest methods used by the court, was indefinite delay. A woman might be told she would soon receive an audience, a reassignment, or permission to leave the palace. Soon became weeks. Weeks became months. Months became years. No refusal was ever spoken. No decision announced. Waiting became a form of captivity. Diaries describe women counting footsteps, memorizing the sound of bells, marking time by incense burns. Hope was never denied. It was endlessly postponed. Forced religious submission. For women considered troublesome or inconvenient, the court offered a solution framed as honor, religious retreat. A woman could be encouraged to shave her head and enter monastic life. Officially, this was voluntary. In reality, refusal was unthinkable. Once tonsured, she was removed from political relevance. Her poems ceased to matter. Her lineage lost influence. Many women entered temples not out of faith but exhaustion. One record notes a former court lady who wept uncontrollably during her ordination, her tears soaking the sleeves she would soon no longer wear. The punishment of observation court women lived under constant evaluation. Every poem was analyzed, every gesture interpreted, every silence scrutinized. A woman who drew too much attention through beauty, wit, or emotional expression risked becoming a problem. Problems were corrected. She might be moved farther from central chambers, her screen repositioned to block visibility, her attendants reassigned. She would still hear the court, still smell the incense, still sense the power she once touched, but she would no longer be seen. Mental unraveling. Modern psychology would recognize the symptoms described in court diaries: disassociation, insomnia, loss of appetite, periods of muteness. Some women stopped writing entirely. Others filled pages with fragmented thoughts, repeating the same lines, questioning whether they still existed beyond the screen. One entry reads only, "I sat, I waited, I listened," repeated for days. No exit. Leaving the imperial court was not freedom. Women who lost favor were often married off to distant relatives, lower-ranking officials, or provincial nobles. Removed from silk halls to unfamiliar households, they carried the court's discipline with them. They remained silent. They avoided attention. They obeyed reflexively. The punishment had already done its work. Why we never heard these stories? The imperial court recorded poetry, rituals, births, and ceremonies. It did not record breakdowns. Silence was considered success. A woman who vanished quietly had fulfilled her role. No rebellion meant no problem. And so history remembered harmony, not the cost of enforcing it, the truth behind the beauty. The Japanese imperial court did not rely on chains or bloodshed. It relied on precision, on silence, on isolation, on making women doubt their own presence. It was a system that did not need violence, because by the time punishment began, resistance had already been trained out. The screens, the rituals, the poetry, the etiquette, all were tools, not to elevate women, but to contain them. And behind the soft rustle of silk sleeves and the measured cadence of court verse, countless women learned the same lesson: In the imperial court, obedience was survival, and silence was the price.